Every morning Carl was splashed with cold water while sleeping. This white man did it, he even dragged him out. But when Carl ran out of the room, this man continued to spray water on him, and dragged him to the water barrel. Then he constantly pressed Carl's head into the barrel. Actually, this wasn't the first time Carl had been bullied. When he met his white friends at school, they would spit on his pants. When he entered the dorm, this guy said, "I don't live with black people." Seeing him, the white people all packed up and got out of the room. Carl quietly went to his bed. Carl could only silently endure this racism, because his family condition was very poor. Therefore, graduating from naval school was the only chance to change his life. However, there was another trouble happening to him. Because he dropped out of school in 7th grade, he only got 37 points when taking the exam. If he continued to fail the course, he would be expelled from school. But the white people didn't want to teach him. Therefore, taking advantage of the weekend, Carl would go to the library. He asked a black girl to teach him about the knowledge related to the naval. He studied from morning until the library closed. He learned under the guidance of Joe. On the next test, Carl got 76 points. Luckily, he also passed the course. The next day, it was a practice session in the water. There were 2 rookies diving in to repair the lifeboat. But unexpectedly, the boat suddenly sank. In times of danger, a rookie's snorkel got stuck in the boat. Seeing that the situation looked bad, Carl hurriedly asked for help. He carried another snorkel, then found their location. He swam to the side of the person who was trapped. When he just pulled out the snorkel, the boat shook violently. Carl quickly regained his composure. However, his teammate was about to drown because he didn't have the snorkel. In the moment of danger, because the other teammate was too scared, he ran away first. But Carl didn't give up. He quickly attached the snorkel that he had brought. So finally his teammate was saved. When they got back to school, their superiors immediately summoned them. He called out the person who had fled, but surprisingly, he didn't even scold this person, but gave him a medal. Why did the superior praise this person? Because they wanted to humiliate Carl, and they wanted Carl to realize that black people would never get glory here. Not long after, Carl's father passed away from illness. Carl remembered the time when his father was still alive. Every day he had to work very hard in the hot sun. While Carl still hadn't done anything to help his father, this made him extremely anguished. Thinking about that, Carl really didn't want to endure anymore. He went to the officer who bullied him in order to challenge. Carl put on a diving helmet, and then challenged the white officer. When the water was over the nose, they started timing. After 2 minutes, the 2 of them were fine. Their eyes didn't even blink. But by the 4th minute, the officer started to get annoyed. But for fear of losing face, he refused to give up. At this time, Carl couldn't take it anymore. The officer's nose started to bleed, but he still refused to take off the diving helmet. Seeing that, his subordinate rushed over to take it off. Thanks to that, he escaped death. So Carl won. Even so, he still had no respect. A few days later, he returned to his dorm and saw a piece of paper. The paper was written, "We'll drown you, bastard." That officer threatened him. He told Carl not to go to the naval school graduation exam, because he would make Carl fail. But Carl wasn't afraid, even irritated him. The officer got very angry, then threw Carl's radio on the ground. This made Carl extremely indignant, because it was a gift that his dad gave him. But he tried to endure, because he knew, only tomorrow, he would be able to escape from here. The next day, the exam took place and the requirements of the test were also simple. In order to graduate, candidates only needed to be underwater and assemble the accessories. Carl wore a diving suit and dived into the water. He soon found his target. At this time, he asked to give the tool bag, but unexpectedly, the officer slit the bag before throwing it down to Carl. As a result, the tools fell out when throwing into the water. Carl was a bit confused. After that, he quickly started picking them up one by one. There was one person who quickly finished the test. Till night, only Carl was in the water. He had been in the water for 9 hours, so his whole body was so cold. Although his hands were trembling, he still tried to assemble the accessories. At this time, the officer shouted into the loudspeaker, "If you continue, you will die." Carl didn't even respond. Then, because the officer couldn't wait any longer, he had to order his subordinates to pull Carl up. The person who Carl saved quickly rushed first and tried to pull Carl up. Suddenly, the rope nearby moved. They quickly pulled it up. It was Carl's accessories that were completely assembled. After that, Carl slowly swam up. When taking off the diving helmet, everyone saw that he was cold all over, but his eyes still showed determination. Finally, the officer was convinced by Carl. Carl Brashear finished the test in 9 hours and 30 minutes. Thanks to the determination, Carl also graduated from the naval school. Before leaving, he discovered that the radio that was broken by the officer had been repaired. However, this was only the beginning of Carl. His goal wasn't to be a diver, but to be a senior officer. A few years later, the opportunity finally came to Carl. He was tasked with finding a nuclear warhead under the sea. Suddenly, there was a submarine appearing in front of him. He quickly swam away, but unexpectedly the snorkel got caught in the submarine and dragged him forward. When he took his snorkel out, the ship was already close to him. Carl hurriedly dodged so he didn't get hit by the submarine. But when Carl was about to swim ashore, he suddenly saw a nuclear warhead. He quickly swam over there, and then pulled it up. But unexpectedly, the rope was loose. Then the accident happened, which cut off his left leg. When waking up, Carl found out he was in the hospital. Carl didn't seem desperate at all, even asked the doctor to put a prosthetic leg for him. After putting the prosthetic leg, he practiced every day. However, his prosthetic leg was weak, so it was difficult for him to stand for long. As a result, when he had only practiced for a while, his legs were already unsteady. After that, Carl switched to skipping rope, but the rope got stuck in his leg. After that, he tried skipping rope again with 2 legs. This made his leg wound very painful. Because of the haste, Carl fell to the ground. While he was in despair, suddenly, the officer who used to hate him came to and wanted to help him. He said that the Naval Command was considering Carl's health. They would force Carl to retire. In order to help Carl, the officer went to his superior to confront. He wanted to give Carl for weeks to practice, then invited the naval commander to hold a fair meeting for Carl. But the superior immediately refused and stood up to leave. But at this moment, many reporters had surrounded the door. Everyone wanted to know if Carl could get fair. There was no choice, the superior could only agree. After that, the officer helped Carl practice. Fortunately, Carl quickly recovered and reached the physical condition as a normal soldier. At the trial, the superior made it difficult for Carl. He asked Carl, "With your current health, can you fight someone who is younger and stronger than you?" Carl said, "No problem." The superior took out a diving suit weighing nearly 290 kilograms. "If you can wear it and then walk 12 steps, this will prove you have a real capacity," the superior said. Carl agreed with this. The officer put on the wetsuit and diving helmet for Carl, and then helped him up. Carl would have to bear a great weight if he wasn't helped up, but the superior disagreed, so Carl could only try to slowly stand up. This consumed a lot of his effort. Then he started walking slowly. By the 7th step, he was almost exhausted. Carl tried to get to the 8th step, but suddenly, Carl's legs seemed to be broken again. Everyone was extremely nervous. The superior told him to give up, but only the officer was still cheering and encouraging Carl. Carl ignored all the pain, just continued to move forward. His every step touched the ground, and that made him hurt a lot. Finally, Carl also came in front of the officer. He had succeeded. Everyone just silently looked at Carl. The superior stood up and claimed that Carl was reinstated. After that, everyone cheered and clapped. Carl became the first disabled person to be reinstated in the U.S. Navy. This is a real story. 2 years later, Carl Brashear became the first black senior officer in the U.S. Navy. The movie comes here. Thanks for watching.